But one of the questions he asked was, can you show me proof that you've been negatively impacted by the Sri Lankan government? So I took my shirt off and showed all the scars on my body, and that was enough for him to grant me a visa to enter Canada as a permanent resident.
Wow.
And that's how I got my visa. I've said this before, physical scars heal, emotional scars, they fester. Unfortunately, also for me, 2 days after I landed, my father was shot and killed.
Oh.
And when you're a prisoner, all your identity is stripped away. You're known as 1056. You don't have a name, you have no identity, and that's you. The whole life, people always thought, teachers who taught me, my family members who thought I will amount to nothing, I was always constantly underestimated. If somebody tells me I can't do it, then that becomes my drive. Did I have doubts along the way? Of course. But I didn't let that to consume my ability to do the things I wanted to do. And one night, I was cleaning a building at 44 King Street West. As I was cleaning, it was a massive, massive office, corner office with couch and boardroom and fridge and a bar fridge. And I'm like, I couldn't believe it was bigger than my little the apartment I was living in. And I'm like, I should aspire to this. You know, why can't I be this? Fast forward 36 years later, I became the largest independent asset management company, and I went from the mailroom to boardroom, and going from mailroom boy to retiring as the vice chairman August of 2023.
Today we're honored to host Roy Ratnabal, a true testament to resilience and determination. From his early days as a child prisoner of war in Sri Lanka to building a remarkable life in Canada, Roy's journey is nothing short of extraordinary. Rising from adversity, he retired recently as chairman of CI Global Asset Management, overseeing over $100 billion in assets under management. If you've ever thought of giving up or felt like life was too hard, you'll want to hear this. Roy brings us his inspiring story of rising from a janitor to vice chairman, proving that perseverance and ambition can overcome even the toughest odds. So let's go. Hi, everyone. I am so honored to have Roy Ratnabal on the podcast today. This has been a long time coming, very special for me because Roy has an incredible story that I've been waiting for him to tell to you because it's unlike any other Challenger story. Roy has had to deal with some incredible adversity, challenges, and then despite that, rose to become one of the most prominent leaders in financial services here in Canada. So Roy Ratnabal, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jerome. Appreciate that. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So Roy, what I'm so excited about is that both of us are immigrants. I'm a refugee, a product of the Sri Lankan Civil War, but you have an incredible story of survival. So I want you to go back to where it all started. You had a pretty good life in Sri Lanka, and then it all turned on its head.
Yeah. Right. It's a very good place to start. I would say the turning point of my life was May of 1987. And I say that because I was born in Sri Lanka, in Colombo, just like you were, and then moved when I was maybe 3 years old to the north, to my ancestral hometown where my parents are from. It's called Point Pedro. And so I grew up there. I started my formal education at Hartley College. And then things were fine, you know. We played cricket and had a, laughter-loaded teenage life. And then 87 rolled around. So 83 was a riot, and the war started intensifying, especially in the north. And in 87 May, Sri Lankan government had a military operation in the north called Operation Liberation. And basically it was to recapture the north, the Jaffna Peninsula, from the Tamil Tigers, and the war started, and they rounded up about 2,700 Tamil males between the age of sort of 14 and 40. They considered that to be the fighting age. And unfortunately, I was 16 years old at the time, 17, sorry. So I was rounded up along with 2,700 other Tamil able men and was put in a cargo ship, sent to the south in Gaul, where Buza army camp is, and were kept there for about 3 months. You know, I went through unspeakable torture, and miraculously, I was able to escape that place to back to Colombo. And that's when my dad decided that maybe there's no opportunity for a young Tamil boy like me in Sri Lanka, and decided to send me out of the country to Canada. Thought that Canada might be the land of opportunity for a young boy like me, and well, how right he was in his assessment.
Right. Wow. That was likely some traumatic experience that you had gone through. You were 16 years old and you were arrested.
Yeah, I was 16 going into 17.
Wow. What did that do to your psyche? Like, you must have been, you know, really processing a lot at that time.
Yeah, I mean, it's look, I think you sometimes find yourself in situations that you never imagine you'll ever find yourself in. And I think if I were to pick one turning point of my incarceration was, I remember sitting there, my right bicep was cut open from the torture, and it was bleeding very badly. And the blood was dripping down my right arm, and I ripped a part of my prisoner's garb and made a crude Band-Aid out of it, thinking that this is not something I imagine I will end up finding myself in. And sometimes in life, all you can do is how you respond to life. And sitting in that place with people being tortured and screaming and crying, and to have that sort of thought at the age of almost 17, to really say that I have to fight through this and I have to emerge out of this on the other side victoriously, and I just would never go down and choose death over living. And so I did everything I could in prison to stay alive, and I think that was sort of what drove me to find a way to get out of the prison when some others have died in the prison. Yeah, it was one of those moment of clarity, I would say, that sort of changed the way that I looked at life and how I wanted to lead my life.
So 16 years old, you're seeing your friends die, you're dealing with torture,
Right.
and incredible pain very early on in your life, and now you're arriving in Canada.
Right.
Courageous decision for your dad to get you to Canada. Right. Tell me a bit about that, how he got to that decision.
Yeah, I mean, my dad, I say he's a faithful Sri Lankan. He told me that he was born here, he'll die here, that's what he said. But for me, he thought that after seeing the torture that I went through, I think as a father, he realized that he couldn't protect or give the lifestyle that I deserved, which is very sad for a father to come to that conclusion. And he wrote a letter of plea to the Canadian High Commission in Sri Lanka. My dad was a prolific writer, and I think he made a good case. And at that time, Brian Mulroney was a Prime Minister of Canada. I think he had a very compassionate immigration program for those who have suffered in the hands of authorities and anywhere in the world. So I owe a huge debt of gratitude to Brian Mulroney and Canada for considering my dad's letter. And I was given an opportunity to go meet with the visa officer in Sri Lanka, in Colombo. I believe it's Colombo 7 is where the High Commission was. And so I was granted an interview. I went there. The visa officer name was Robert Orr, whom I've reconnected again a few years ago. He asked me a bunch of questions, but one of the questions he asked was, can you show me proof that you've been negatively impacted by the Sri Lankan government? So I took my shirt off and showed all the scars on my body, and that was enough for him to grant me a visa to enter Canada as a permanent resident.
Wow.
And that's how I got my visa. Landed here in Toronto April 19th to 1988, so it's 36 years ago almost.
So you arrived with scars on your body.
Yeah.
That you used as evidence of having a good enough reason for Canada to let you in.
Right.
What an incredible first entry into Canada. So you show up at Canada. Are you on your own? Do you have siblings?
So I came alone here, but I did have an uncle, maternal uncle, who was also a new immigrant to Canada, but he did come and pick me up at the airport. But for all intents and purposes, I was alone. Like I didn't have my mom, dad here. My brother was already in Europe. Yeah, I mean, look, I've said this before, physical scars heal, emotional scars, they fester. And so when I came here, eventually the physical scars, they healed, but the emotional scar, they never heal. You know, they fester. And I never left Sri Lanka in my entire life, so I'm here in a new country. And unfortunately, also for me, 2 days after I landed, my father was shot and killed.
Oh.
And so that was another blow to me. And I was only 18 years old. And when he died, part of me died with him. But the other part became a fighter. And I thought, you know, so I had to live for two people after that, for him and for me, because he wanted me to come here. I remember him saying to me at the airport, don't just survive, but live. And so I wanted to live. And I thought if I did well enough in life, I could give the life he should have had. That became my coal for the furnace of ambition. And so I became like a single focused on becoming successful in Canada, despite all the odds were against me. It came at a cost, and I talk about it in the book, because then you harden your heart, and you forget about everything around you, tunnel vision. You just want to get to that goal. So that came at a cost of friendship and family, and I don't apologize, but I recognize. But at the time, I was in it, and I was battling my own self. And I always say to people, the only battle you're going to have is the person in the mirror. Right? Every morning you wake up, and that's the battle you're going to have. And so I've been pretty candid in the book about the evolution of myself and how I evolved from what I call victim to a victor. And I believe the circumstances make you a victim, but the choices you make you remain as one. And I always refuse to allow the circumstance to define my dignity and my destiny. So I had to kind of focus on that to become successful. And my dad used to say when I was a kid, look, there are only two choices you have. Either you become really good at balancing your checkbook, or you make enough money you don't have to worry about your checkbook. So I thought I'll try the second choice.
It's the latter. Wow. It sounds like you were really motivated and fueled by the sacrifices that your father made, eventually, costing him his life. Do you find that it gave you that real drive to accelerate your career and just work harder than everyone else when you got to Canada?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's I realized that, I was had deficiencies of different varieties, right? I mean, I knew English, but obviously not as good as how I communicate today. Had a bit of an accent, had almost no confidence, no connection. But so I had to work on all that, right? I need to learn to network better. I need to learn to make an impression. How do I differentiate myself? How do I communicate better? And I always believe that 9 out of 10 interactions are not memorable. When I ended up in Bay Street, I remember thinking, like, I wear a suit and tie, and except for my skin tone, I looked, speak the way just like anybody else did. And you've been in that circuit. And so why would make an investor put their money with my firm? So how do I differentiate myself, right? That was one. And then communicate. My father drilled that into my head. The communication is like laws of physics. It applies everywhere. You're constantly communicating, constantly selling. Doesn't matter if you're actually selling or if you're talking to somebody. So how do I communicate effectively? And then the other thing is, I say, appreciation for life. You have to appreciate. So I communicate, differentiate, appreciate. The three things I live by. And the thing about appreciation is that a lot of people, and I never met ungrateful, successful person. Nobody wins alone. You need somebody to help you, and we all had mentors and supporters and fans, and I was fortunate enough to have enough mentors that guided me, and I'm so appreciative for them. And so, look, hard work wins, but luck also helps along the way.
Well, you got to Canada, and so now you're starting out. How do you go from there to Bay Street?
Yeah, I was just like anyone, right? When you come to Canada, any immigrant who came to Canada with no skill set like I was, you do all kind of menial jobs. So first, I was, and I detail all this in the book, but just very in brief, I was working at a factory, the north of Toronto, just north of Steeles on Keele Street, and it's a packaging factory. Had a glue gun, and I would stand there and just spray the glue 8 hours a day. It was painful, but you had to do it. I think they paid me $3.50 an hour. I'm not even sure if it's legal minimum, but and then I had a cleaning gig at night. So I'd work from 8 to 5, come home, and then go downtown to clean buildings. And one night, I was cleaning a building at 44 King Street West, which is a Scotia Bank building at King and Bay. And as I was cleaning, it's a massive, massive office, corner office with couch and boardroom and fridge and a bar fridge. And I'm like, I couldn't believe it was bigger than my little the apartment I was living in. And I'm like, I should aspire to this. Why can't I be this? And so I started manifesting that sort of world that I wanted to create for myself, and kind of applied for a role. Coming back one night, I flipped through the Toronto Sun newspaper, and I saw an ad that says, office help needed, $14K. I don't know what K meant. That's how much I didn't know. And I applied. And a long story, there's a lot of struggle trying to land the job. And I finally got the job in the mailroom. I was the 25th employee at this small, family-owned, privately held asset management company with less than $100 million in assets. And fast forward 36 years later, it became the largest independent asset management company. And I went from the mailroom to boardroom, and going from mailroom boy to retiring as the vice chairman August of 2023.
Wow. What an incredible ride, and so inspiring. Now, along the way, did you have self-doubt? Did you deal with, hey, I'm still that Sri Lankan boy who came here with nothing. I don't belong here. Were those voices in your head?
Well, there's always what they call the imposter syndrome, right? I mean, you doubt yourself, but the thing that I'm not sure if it is my personality, or is it something I learned? Like so far, no one has ever expected me to win in life. As someone who has been constantly underestimated, I can give you many examples of this. The whole life, people always thought, teachers who taught me, my family members who thought I will amount to nothing, I was always constantly underestimated. So whole life, I learned to use that to my advantage. I remember when I was leaving the factory job to work in downtown in this asset management company, and the factory owner said, "You're not corporate material, right?" And then when I wanted to do other things within CI, people, even some of my mentors, have discouraged me from going into becoming part of this like sales team, which is where you go recruit capital, which is a heck of a job. And I was told that I don't have the DNA for that. And then I went to Vancouver. Someone said, "Oh, you're not going to survive in Vancouver." Then I became the head of Western Canada, and I wanted to become the head of Western Canada, and they were like, "No, you can't do it." Then I came here to run the entire distribution for Canada and lead the Canadian team. I was told, "No, you can't do it." When I wrote the book, someone said, "There's no way someone's going to publish, anyone serious is going to publish your book." And then Penguin picked up the book and published it. So all my life, people, whenever I heard no, I heard yes. Whenever somebody said impossible, I heard possible. And if everybody says no, then it can be done. And so I never listen to those people who tell me I can't do it. In fact, if somebody tells me I can't do it, then that becomes my drive. And so did I have doubts along the way? Of course. But I didn't let that to consume my ability to do the things I wanted to do and the goals that I wanted to hit.
I think it sounds like your whole life has been defying the odds every single time. And it's so inspiring to see that. And then you take on a bigger challenge. You write a best-selling book, Prisoner 156, which if you haven't read it, I highly recommend you get it. I read it cover to cover, and I was blown away.
Prisoner 1056.
1056, yes.
That's my prisoner number, by the way.
Yeah, tell me the meaning behind 1056.
Yeah, so I said that there was 2,700 people were rounded up and taken to prison, and everybody was given a prisoner number, and mine was 1056. And I could have gone with other titles. I went with that, and there was a lot of debates around what the title should be, and I wanted to go with that because basically that changed the direction of my life. That, because when you're a prisoner, all your identity is stripped away. You're known as 1056. You don't have a name, you have no identity, and that's you. And so even that little cross there is meant to be as no longer, is sort of that signifies that little hatch there. So I wanted to go with that, number, and so Penguin. The book in itself was I wrote it during COVID, and I banged it off in 60 days, but it took longer to edit and then to get to market. But Penguin came and really liked the manuscript and bought it, wanted to distribute it. So I was actually quite surprised that they liked the book. And I'm glad it resonated well. I mean, I don't think if it wasn't for the book, we would have connected.
Yeah. It's very, very glad you put your life story into this.
Right.
And then you have Brian Mulroney, former Prime Minister of Canada, giving you an acknowledgement.
Right.
Tell me how that came about.
I mean, how fitting is that?
Yeah.
Because as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, that Brian Mulroney was the Prime Minister at the time when I came to Canada, and it's because of his immigration policy that I'm here today alive. And so him and his policy and Canada gave me a second lease on life. And so I thought, I should probably try to see if he would give an endorsement. It was a long shot. So I found some people who knew, Mr. Mulroney, and we were able to get the transcript to him, luckily a few years before he passed on. And he was happy to give me an endorsement, and I was shocked when I saw the email back from his handler saying that Brian Mulroney read the book and the transcript at the time, and he quite loved it and wanted to give an endorsement.
Wow. What were you aiming to accomplish with this book? What message were you looking to bring?
I really wanted to tell a story of a teenage boy who was tortured in Sri Lanka. And then came to Canada at the late teens and transformed his life, and then triumphed in his late 40s. But more than that, it's telling the collective story of people like yourself who have left Sri Lanka. And I think before the podcast we spoke briefly, and you were telling me how it resonated with you, and I've heard that so many times. So though the book is about my life, but it's really looking at the issue through the lens of one person. But I think that lens is very similar to everybody else. As I always say, everybody has similar story but different. And so I wanted to tell this story to the world of Tamils leaving Sri Lanka and going through the struggles to be where we are today, and to really pay homage to this nation called Canada. And I think, does Canada have some flaws? For sure. But I think it is, to me, still one of the freest, fairest, and fundamentally decent society ever created by human beings. And I wanted to record that. And it's almost, you can almost say this is a love letter to Canada as well as the experience of my life, and many people like myself. So really touching that, like really resonating with people who actually experienced the war, then to the next generation of people who are coming behind us, who have never had the chance to really know the story, because the parents came here and they got right into work, building a life and giving a future for these kids, and for them to know what happened to the ancestors. And then third, the most important thing is to really tell the non-Tamil audience, non-Sri Lankan audience about the struggle the country went through. And it isn't to put blame on anyone. It's really human condition, talking about the good and the bad on both sides. I'm here today because the people on the other side of it helped me. So humanity resides in everyone. And so really, at the end of the day, it is, I'm trying to say that once we break down the walls that separate us, whether by skin tones or religion or culture, at the end of the day, at the core of it, we are all the same. We have the same wish, same aspiration, same fears. So I think the world will be a much better place if we can look beyond that. It's becoming such a divided world, and where people don't see common threads between people. And so I think that what I'm trying to encourage through this book, one other thing I'm trying to encourage is that sometime we should stop paying attention to the past divisions and pay attention to the present bonds. And I think that's sort of what sort of drove me to write this book.
Yeah. Both of us appreciate Canada in a very unique sense. We had nowhere else to go back to.
Right.
Canada has been an incredible lifeline for us. When you think about Canada and where it is today, and with all of the things going on in the world and the threats of becoming the 51st state of the United States, what is your message to Canada? How do you feel about Canada today?
I think, right or wrong, the political narrative that put people into different buckets, and people are divided by skin color, culture, and religious background. And this used to be the very definition of racism. And somehow it's accepted and applauded. And I want to go back to a world that I remember based on meritocracy. I truly believe that there are people that suffer from racial injustice, and that's true. but it's not the way that it's been portrayed in media or by politicians. They make it look like somehow people of color are always, being discriminated and targeted in this country, and that narrative I don't buy into. I think meritocracy is what we need to get back to. We need to lower the barrier, not the bar. And I think where we're trying to do is lower the bar. And I want competent people running companies. I want competent people in every aspect of our society, not just because someone's skin color or like I said, I think we need to find the root causes of what causes people to underperform in society and try to lower the barrier to entry, but not lower the bar. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like I think the meritocracy still should be the driving force of our country.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that you and I got opportunities in corporate Canada just because the way we look or something. And if I ever found out that's the reason, I'd be more insulted. And I like to think that I was hired because I was good at what I was doing.
Right. Yeah. As we wrap up here, we have a lot of young people who watch this show, a lot of them dealing with very challenging circumstances, nothing probably near the kinds of things you have had to deal with. But many newcomers and many outsiders who don't have all of the networks and resources that are handed to them, what would you like to say to them? You are such an inspiration. How would you give them some words of advice?
I think first indicator of success is the individual decision making, and get away from groupthink. And often people fall into the groupthink, and it is understandable because it's anthropology, right? Because we are pack animals, and but I think we need to start to get away from the groupthink, and I truly believe every human should be guaranteed only two things: freedom and choice. When you have that, you'll be rewarded for the good choices you make by society. You'll be penalized or punished for the bad choices you make. And every person has the right to control their own destiny, and you're 100% in charge of the input. You can't control the output, but you're 100% in charge of the input. So if the output is not what you expected, then change the input. And before whining about your life, I recommend people to go take a look at themselves in the mirror and ask yourself this one question: what could I have done differently to change the outcome? And that's how you improve. I think to improve is to change. And often people keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And I've been guilty of that. And I would say probably I wasted my late 20s to early 30s just blaming everybody else but myself. And I think if you were to just take responsibility for your own outcome, and you'll do way better. It still doesn't guarantee success, but it would at least give you some sense of happiness, in the sense you tried everything you could possibly. And because you're giving a toolbox and a set of tools, and you are supposed to exhaust that potential. And how many heartbeats you got, nobody knows. So take every heartbeat like your last one and go for it.
Wow. It's a great way to end it. Roy Ratnabal, you're such an inspiring story, from prison camp to the boardroom, and then a best-selling author. We're honored to have you. Thank you, and I look forward to having you back again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.